Okay, welcome everyone. We will begin now. Thank you very much for joining this Trade and Lux webinar on resuming hospitality businesses in a socially distanced world. A very pertinent topic and something of interest to all of you, I'm sure. We are hoping to have quite a bit of time in this session for a discussion and a debate with the key members of the panel that we have here today. So we'll keep the presentation elements relatively short. If you do have questions, we are going to do all the Q&A at the end, but please add into the chat any questions that you have so that we can collate them in advance. I have muted everybody, but I may bring people in for specific questions if they have later on. So I shall begin. I'm just letting a few more people join the session. Just hoping you can all see this slide has moved on. Just wanted to let you know about the work that Trade are doing for the industry. So Trade are working in partnership with the Drinks Trust and Hospitality Action, and also Hospitality for You, which is raising money through its own e-commerce site for the industry. COVID and how that might affect the industry. Then I'm going to hand over to Paul Pavley, who's a hospitality consultant and ex-MD of Punch Taverns, to give his perspective on what this means for you and your businesses going forward. And then we'll go into our panel session. We're delighted to have Anthony Pender here, who's co-founder of the Yummy Pub Co., Simon Potts, MD of The Alchemist Bar and Restaurants, James Courtney, founder of Lux Rewards, and then Katie and Paul will join the panel as well. So for those who missed it, please do add questions that you might have into the chat so that we can coordinate those for the Q&A session. So the hospitality industry as it stands today, here we are, the 21st of May, 66 days ago. We were told to stop non-essential travel and contact with others, avoid pubs, clubs and theatres. A few days later, we were ordered to shut all of those businesses, and the furlough scheme was introduced. Johnson announced the nationwide lockdown after that weekend, and we've been in a sort of lockdown state since then, pretty much. A few things have been happening, of course. A lot of delivery businesses have been continuing, you know, despite the sort of hospitality on trade side being down. Google Maps introduced a feature to help make it easier for people to find restaurants near them that deliver. On the 16th of April, some of the big chains started to announce limited reopenings, and this has progressed over the last few weeks across the whole industry to have businesses that are able to do takeaways and deliveries, you know, to actually resume business as they're allowed to. And then more recently, we've had this sort of shift from stay at home to stay alert, which I'm sure we will have views on. The alert system was announced, and a roadmap for reopening society was outlined. And here we are today. And yes, the furlough scheme was extended last on the 12th of May as well. So this is where we're at today. You know, we're not entirely sure where everyone is and what's happening, but but we'll get there, and we're sort of planning what's next. So this was the chart that was announced with the stages of potential reopening, and hospitality there at the end on step 3, being positioned as, you know, for July at the earliest, but the dates are obviously subject to move around. So that's the status on things. In the meantime, of course, we have had businesses carrying on. So we've had across the supply chain deliveries from producers, from you know, pubs, restaurants, breweries, coming to your door. We've had a lot of virtual experiences, you know, from the same type of businesses as well. And we are seeing some parts of the world opening up. So we have in Australia, venues are allowed to have 10 people in, as long as they're socially distanced and have food. In Spain, you can get your paella on the beach in Valencia there, with, you know, with certain measures in place. And then, you know, other parts of the world, perhaps some rather comically, are looking at different ways of introducing the social distancing to their venues. And this is a huge sort of challenge as to how to do this in all the different spaces that we manage, and whether 1 meter or 2 meter is the right thing, and all the other measures that need to go in place. But, you know, there's going to be more change to come. So touch screens to order food, which had been introduced over the last couple of years in some of the high street chains, are not really going to work from a hygiene perspective. So perhaps we move more to a minority report model, where we're sort of ordering in midair, and there is, you know, the technology is there for this sort of stuff as well. So I think we're going to see increasing use of technology within the industry. And actually, there's a report that's coming out this week on the role that digital plays within the industry, and there's a couple of things that are highlighted here. Accelerated by COVID-19, we've had virtual venues and the direct to consumer and in-home drinking and dining experiences really sort of accelerating at a much faster pace. And the next 12 months, we're going to see some interesting developments in the on-trade. So not just sort of going back to normal, but having greater use of technology and automation within venues, and the engagement with customers and patrons outside of visits that they are making. And maybe you have pub quizzes that are, you know, including some people virtually and some people physically, for example. And you're going to see in the home remaining a key element of the mix here. So people using, you know, having more nights at home, but also wanting a better experience. So an upgrade to traditional home drinking, and lots of interesting ways in which that might be developed. So lots to come. And it's going to be tricky. You know, we've already had casual dining challenges over the last few years, and you know, most recently the casual dining group has filed for administration. So, you know, we're going to have more of these coming as well. So I think it's going to be tricky. And, you know, what do we do? What are the measures that need to be put in place to sort of open up safely? And I know, for example, Portobello Road has been talked about closing to allow restaurants to actually open up onto the street there, to have a better chance of having social distancing in place, which is great. And I know Natalie's mentioned that Soho are looking at this as well. So lots of different things, measures being looked at. So I'm going to hand over now to Katie to reveal some insights from a consumer perspective in response to where we're at and where we're going to be heading next. So over to you, Katie, if you'd like to share your screen.
Thank you. You need to allow me to, though, it says.
Okay, let me and make host. You should be able to share your screen now.
Thank you. Right, okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Can you all see that? Is that working? Fabulous. Okay, right, I'm going to crack on. It looks like it's all working, so somebody stop me if it's not. Thank you so much for that introduction. Just for those of you who don't know who Cam Media are, we are a research agency specialising in hospitality and also grocery retail. Most of what we do is bespoke research, but today I'm going to present to you sort of a bit of an amalgamation of some of the research that we have been conducting and collating over the last sort of 8 weeks of lockdown. If you'd like a copy of any of these slides, my contact details will be on the last slide, so just take down my email address. So I want to just first of all look at what the reality of the consumer predicament is at the moment. And let's start with the good news. Disposable income is predicted to be 17% lower on average in Q2 than usual. That's a monthly fall of around £515 per household. So that's quite a massive drop. And what you also have to remember is that we're using our houses and the things in our houses a lot more than we were previously. So we've also got, you know, Currys have reported a record request for record orders for fridge freezers, and all sorts of things are going wrong. We're spending more on electricity and food. So a monthly fall in income and a monthly increase in expenditure is not going to go well for us. The CBR predicts that we're about to have the deepest recession since the financial crisis, with unemployment more than doubling. So there you go, there's the good news. What I want to come on to is the two types of consumer that we have identified are going to be coming out of this particular situation. So coming out of lockdown, we think there's going to be sort of broadly two ideas of two consumers, and obviously a big spectrum within that. But we think that number one is going to be the sort of freedom-loving consumer that's got a sort of unleashed consumption for, I want to go out more, I want to drink out more, I want to travel more, I want to dine out more. You know, these are the people that have been, maybe had a bit of cabin fever. There may be the people that weren't isolating with the people they would like to have been isolating with, or maybe they're just massive fans of hospitality and socializing and general consumption like I am. We think the second type of consumer that we're going to see is a more cautious consumer. So these are the group that maybe have decided they do like their husband, wife, live-in partner, whoever they're staying with. The kids aren't quite as annoying as they thought they would be. They've been enjoying their family time, you know. These are the people that we think might spend this. They're still going to come out and spend money. We think they're more going to be spending on their actual environment. So perhaps they'll be, you know, buying smart appliances, maybe artwork, new furniture, etc. And they're the people that we're going to have trouble convincing to come back into hospitality in the same way that they were in it before. So I want to take you through very briefly. I've only got sort of 12 minutes, so I'm going to rush through these, but please get in contact for the slides or to talk about it further. These 6 key trends. So number one, talking about being hyper-connected. So what exactly are we doing? 9 billion minutes on Microsoft Teams 2 weeks ago. Google searches on language learning, 100% up year on year. Duolingo boys are laughing all the way to the bank. I'm even learning sign language myself. Facebook group calls are up 1,000%. Video games have been played at record levels. Web content download traffic is up 90%, and actually obviously streaming is on top of that. So what do we mean by hyper-connected, and what will that mean coming out of lockdown? So we know that there's been a growth in e-commerce. I mean, there's just, you know, there's never going to, that's not going to be a surprise to anybody. We know that people are buying more online because they actually can't buy in store or in venue. But I think what the interesting point to make is that a lot of the demographics that we would not expect normally to be participating in e-commerce actually are now. So, you know, you've got the over 70s or the grey pound that previously might have only been found to be spending that money actually in store or in venue and actually on site, we're actually now realizing that those people can use the internet. They can benefit from learning how to use e-commerce. So we need to remember them coming out of all this. Digital marketing, you know, it's very obvious that that digital marketing is incredibly important at the moment, but we must be careful not to drop that when we come out the other side of this, because we are still, as a consumer group, going to be participating more online than we were prior to lockdown, because we've got used to it now. Remember, it only takes 6 weeks for a habit to form, and I think I'm reliably informed that we're in week 8 at the moment. But who knows? There's been a massive increase in assisted online learning. Think about all the sort of cocktail classes or guitar lessons or whatever it might be. So we need to understand that coming out the other side of this, people are going to be questioning whether they actually need to go somewhere to learn, or whether actually a lot more can be done online to save on that travel, to save on that time, to give better life-work balances. And I've mentioned a tech-enhanced experience there. The main point I want to make is that your consumers are going to be more used to using tech and more happy using tech. So you need to be within your venues as well. You need to make sure that you've got the tech that will enhance that customer experience. This is from a report that we released called Plan to Plate, which charts the customer journey from when they decided to first eat out to when they pay their bill. This was released at the end of last year. And the reason I put this slide in, because I want to show you, this is the situation as it was back then, back in the olden days. Remember when we had restaurants, pubs and freedom? Anyway, 1 in 5 were making reservations online, 56% checked a menu before visiting, 26% ordered via an app, 28% would like to be able to prepay their restaurant bill. All of those figures are immaterial right now, but you should have them in your mind, because those figures will increase when we come out the other side of this, because we're going to be more used to using online and we're going to be more wary about touch points when we're actually in venue. So the ordering via app, the paying via app, very, very least that we need. The second trend I want to just take you through quickly is the virtual experience economy. These slides I presented in early March at a conference, all about how experiential was the big thing, and 3 in 4 millennials would rather spend their money on experience rather than material goods. Good luck trying that one now. And that the main reason that people went to pubs and bars was to get an experience they couldn't get at home. Well, the bottom line is, we still have an experience economy, but it's called the virtual experience economy now. And consumers are actually getting used to this. And I think it's going to be a challenge to get them out of their virtual world and back into our reality and into our outlets and into our venues. There's such great stuff available online. You know, John mentioned earlier about online pub quizzes, the National Theatre live stream, which is tonight at 7 o'clock, Streetcar Named Desire with Gillian Anderson, so it should be good. You know, the concerts in your living room, you can see there, you can visit the Guggenheim, you can visit all these amazing places. Hey, if you're really in the mood, you can even go to Auschwitz now. But the point that I'm making is that we're not just all going to suddenly shut our laptops and move away from that. I think we're going to need to understand that we have to somehow find some kind of omni-channel way of representing our brands, even if they are hospitality brands. And if you want to know what hospitality venues have, what changes they've already made, then you can see there 16% have already started to offer online experiences, so pub quizzes, etc. A further 9% are planning to. And then you get to the figure down the bottom that does worry me slightly, which is only 36%, only 36% intend to continue to offer this after lockdown. I think that needs to be higher, because the world is changing and we're not just going to go back to that traditional point of only connecting with a brand when we're actually in venue. So I think we really need to look at, what are we offering online at the moment as brands, as outlets, as restaurant groups, pubs, whatever it might be, and how can we continue that without cannibalizing from our day-to-day sales in venue. Ambient wellness is the third trend I want to cover. It's one of the nicest parts of the global pandemic. There's a phrase you don't hear very often, but one of the positives that's come out of this is the care that we have for people's emotional well-being. You know, we're checking in on people. We already, the conversation about mental health had already got to the point where we were much more open, we were discussing things, and I think that's been accelerated through this global pandemic. And I think that as brands and as operators, we have slightly a responsibility to help to reconnect the consumer to the outside world. And I think if we do that and we continue to look after, the consumers that want to be part of our hospitality world, then we're going to be doing a really positive thing. I've put food safety in there because, for obvious reasons, it's going to be front of everybody's mind. The idea that we need to have a sort of an absolute trace as to where did the food come from, how did it travel to me, how's it been cooked, how's it been served, what's the hygiene and the cleanliness and everything behind it. That's just going to become absolutely imperative as time goes by when we come out of this lockdown. And functional foods I just put in there because I think it's quite amusing that the phrase immune system in food chatter is up 66% on last month. So apparently some of us believe that we can eat our way to avoiding this virus. Health and wellness is a trend that's definitely going to continue on the other side of this. This is a slide from On-Trade Outlook, say end of last year, and this is what food types would you like to see more of in pubs and bars. No one said ice cream, no one said I'll have burger and chips please. Everybody was going for things that are healthier. We're also going to be hyper aware of what we've been putting into our bodies whilst we've been in this lockdown situation, because we've all been cooking the majority of people have been cooking for ourselves. We know exactly what's going into our food. It's going to be really, really important that we know all of that when we start to go back out into outlets and into venues. The fourth out of 6 trends is delivery of everything. I don't really need to explain this too much. I think it's interesting that before the lockdown, they thought that it was around 7% of consumers were using delivery apps on a weekly basis. We're looking at that figure at being around 24% now, and that is absolutely massive. And the other point to make here is that if, as an outlet or a venue, you're not doing any kind of delivery, but you've been umming and ahhing about it, or you're just not too sure, trial it. Try it now, because now is the time where you can iron out the kinks, you can figure out what works, and if you screw up, honest to God, the consumers don't mind so much. It's like, oh, you forgot my chips. Well, there's a global pandemic going on. I'll let you get away with that one. But they're not going to be so forgiving when we come out the other side. So now really is your time to think carefully about how you can delivery and whether it's right for your business. This research was conducted 3 weeks ago now. 25% of people had set up some sort of delivery service within 4 weeks of lockdown. A further 20% were planning to, and we already know that around 10% of hospitality did. So you're talking there, when we come out of lockdown, that's 55%, and 80% of those intend to continue that. That's a massive, massive number. So it's obviously working. And I think that's another important point to make, is that the consumer is going to have so much of a breadth of choice when it comes to delivery and takeaway coming out the other end of this, that we've got to make sure that whatever you're doing is absolutely tip top, because there's other people out there that will easily take your delivery crown. The fifth trend that I want to just pass through quickly is what I'm calling never forget. I'm calling it never forget because I can't bloody stand the phrase corporate and social responsibility. It's, oh yeah, we've got to take responsibility for this because we're a big corporate. Scrap that, get rid of it, use do the right thing, use never forget, use be decent people, use, don't be a dick, whatever phrase you want to use, but, use something that is a little bit more personal than corporate and social responsibility, because I truly believe that what you do now in this particular situation will genuinely define you as a brand going forward, and actually on a personal level as well. But we already know that consumers will reward brands who care, who are shown to care, and who make the right decisions with regards to ethics and impact environment and health. These stats, again, are from a report from last year. We asked, are any of the following important to you in deciding upon which brands to buy from? And this is before a global pandemic. 41% of people cared about the impact that brand could have on their health, 37% impact on the environment, 23% ethical stance. That 11% charity work, you can bet your bottom dollar that's gone up now that everyone's being so vocal about what they are and aren't doing and what's right and wrong. And then finally, the final trend, I would say, is what I'm calling connection and collaboration. So I think that the point here is, we know from figures that consumers are actually, believe it or not, speaking to more people in an average day than they were before the pandemic. Thank you very much, Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams and Blue Jeans and whatever else we're on. But companies are doing that as well, and lots of companies are actually starting to work together. So For those of you who know the route to market for food service, Bid Food and Breaks, sworn competitors, and all of a sudden they're working together. They're using their combined back office, they're using their combined strengths to make sure that they're getting supplies out to people who need them. And I can absolutely assure you that you're going to see a lot more joint ventures, mergers, and people collaborating together for the greater good. And, you know, if I was an operator right now, I'd be looking around saying, right, who can I work with? Where is it that I'm greater than the sum of my parts if I work with someone else? You know, if you're a burger joint, then can you be working with the local cocktail bar? You know, there's so many of these collaborations that will make us better able to serve the general public and the general consumer. This is a real opportunity to reshape your ecosystem. And there's a story I like to tell on this slide, which is from Volvo, the car makers, who invented the 3-prong seatbelt, which is predicted to have saved, you know, millions of lives. They made that patent available to the entire car making community because they knew it was the right thing to do. And they are rightly still very, very proud of that. So, you know, what I would suggest is have a think about how you can collaborate. What are the messages you're putting out there? You know, where can you be creating something or doing something that we're still talking about in 60 years' time, like I just told you that Volvo story. So just in summary, before I hand back, do the right thing, you know, and do it for the right reasons as well. You know, you should care about making sure the consumers are safe. You should care about making sure your teams are safe. You know, this isn't about corporate and social responsibility. It's about doing the right thing. Connect and collaborate with anyone that you can, that you think will bring value to the consumer that you're trying to serve and to entice back into venues and then keep there. Dedicated delivery, figure it out, see if you fancy doing it. If you're going to trial it, now is the right time to make sure that you get it right. There is a focus on wellness, physical, mental, emotional. You know, let's make sure that we are supporting people in all of those ways so that they can come back into our outlets. You know, as operators, we have responsibilities that go beyond washing our hands. People are hyper-connected, so let's make sure that our tech is absolutely up to scratch and that we realise that people are going to be interacting with our brands and with our outlets and with our estates differently going forward. And then finally, the virtual experience economy. You know, this to me is vital. We've been experiencing things online. We're not going to stop experiencing things online. So let's figure out a way that we can make that, you know, that what the brand offering that we have stretch across physical and virtual, and I think if we can do that, then we'd be on for a winner. There is a white paper that we've created with all of that insight in, and obviously I'm very happy to share my slides as well, so if you'd like that, then get in touch. These are my contact details, and really happy to give you guys free of charge anything that you've seen today, and in a bit more detail and possibly at a slightly shorter speed. So that's that. Thank you very much. And I will stop sharing, and then hopefully John will be back on the line.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie. That was brilliant, expertly delivered, and lots of fantastic insights there. I'm going to hand straight over to Paul, who has another whirlwind view from his perspective, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. Just a last reminder to add any questions that you have for the panel into the chat, and we'll collate those. Over to you, Paul.
I can't share, John, right now. It's saying you've disabled it.
I think, Katie, you might need to hand over the baton if you can.
I don't know how to do that.
Or I can take it back and then hand it to Paul.
Yeah, you take it back.
Okay. Right, Paul, I'm handing over to you now.
Oh, cool, thank you. That's great. Thanks, John. Thanks, Katie. I'll rattle through these slides, and like Katie, if you want the slides afterwards, I'm happy to email them across to you. So just drop me an email after this webinar. As John mentioned earlier, I'll just take you through 4 topics. What does this all mean to us now? Questions for you to think about, or more challenges to ask yourselves about your business, really, before we exit this lockdown. How you might want to start planning for success, planning for what I'm calling relaunch rather than reopen, and then what next for your businesses and for the industry. And I guess the first thing is that there isn't a crystal ball. This is uncharted territory for all of us, and we're all taking our educated guesses at what might happen, looking across the world at lockdowns being reopened to try and work out the best form, the best route for our businesses. And you know your business better than anybody else, so you're going to be the best place to work out what plan is right for your business. And that plan's going to change, and that's fine, and I guess and be tweaked over the weeks and months. But the idea is to have a really good plan and to keep really good notes about what happens when you do various bits of that plan. So what does this all mean? I've used some data here from CGA, and if you're not registered with CGA, get into the website, and the data is really, really useful. And they carried out what they call their business confidence survey, 120 leaders in the industry, talking about how they feel about their business, but also the sector that they operate in. And the first slide is like for likes across the industry. And clearly in March, it dropped off a cliff, and May and June will be worse. The point of this slide is not the decline. The point of this slide is the last 12 months, pretty stable like for like numbers across the industry. And whilst 2% isn't great when you consider price changes out there, the point I'm trying to make here is we had a reasonably stable industry for the last 12 or so months. Pretty similar to those leaders' optimism about the industry and their business as well. So the red line is their business, and the orange line is the market. And you can see there increase in optimism of their business and the industry since July 16, just after the Brexit vote. So consistent like for likes for the last year or so, and for the last 3 or 4 years, optimism at an all-time high. So industry is there to be rebuilt post this lockdown. When they were asked whether or not they were going to open all their restaurants and bars post-lockdown, 32% said that they would do, 37% said they wouldn't do, and 31% are undecided. So 2/3 of those leaders are thinking that some restaurants, bars and pubs will not reopen post-lockdown, the ones that aren't quite right for their brand possibly. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the table that says how many roughly won't reopen of the 32 that are going to definitely keep some closed. And it's about 8 to 10% is the number that they said would not reopen post-lockdown. So there are going to be some changes on the high street. Some brands that we love today won't be around, unfortunately, and some venues that we frequent today won't be around post-lockdown. When those leaders were asked what their predictions were for the proportion of sites across the industry that wouldn't reopen, this is how they felt. So they felt more confident about hotels reopening post-lockdown and less so about late night venues, and restaurants and bars and wet-led pubs somewhere in the middle. So this is their views of where that market may be once we exit a lockdown. How about consumers? How are they feeling right now? And Katie talked about in detail a bit earlier. Another CGA survey that talked to consumers about themselves, and nearly 5,000 consumers, so a really good sample size, asking them how comfortable are they going to feel resuming their normal visits to pubs, bars and restaurants post-lockdown. And 1/5, 22% said they're going to be right back at it straight away. And that's the younger demographic, the fearless people that are going to go out again straight away post-lockdown. And this middle group here, just over half, are going to go out again, but they're a bit cautious. And Katie talked about caution earlier. And these guys want reassuring. These guys want to know when they come out to visit us, they're going to be safe, and we're going to be safe as well. So over half the population here are saying, we want to come out again, we just want to know it's safe. And if you add the last column, which is I'm not sure yet, you've got 2/3 roughly of consumers that visit restaurants and bars on a regular basis saying, we want to come out again, but actually reassure us, make things right for us, and we'll come out again. And luckily only 14% saying no, and hopefully that number will go down as the weeks and months post-lockdown open up. So that's the CGA survey of regular pub, bar and restaurant consumers. This is a YouGov survey, and the point I'm trying to make here is a similar sample size of 1,000, similar numbers. And the question here was about how uncomfortable would you be of visiting bars and restaurants and pubs post. So pretty similar numbers to the CGA survey. So I think we can sort of, we can agree that 2/3 of consumers want to come out again, just need reassurance. And that's going to be a key part of your action planning going forward, and your communication to reassure consumers that when they come to your venue, you're going to treat them really well and look after their well-being. And the final survey is a smaller survey, Statista, completed last week, and a similar sample again, 64% pubs, bars and clubs. So 3 surveys, roughly 2 in 3 people want to come out again, are going to need convincing, are going to need reassuring about coming out to your venues. Now, what is that? That's asking people to think about the future. what's happened already out there. So in China, post-lockdown, in Wuhan, Shanghai, Beijing, CGA and Nielsen did a similar survey, 2,000 consumers who visit restaurants and bars, and asked them whether they'd been out post-lockdown. And the numbers were roughly half and half. Half hadn't been out yet, and half had been out. 48% had been out. And the ones that had been out on multiple occasions, back to those favourite venues. So these guys do want to come out. They do want to experience that hospitality again. They just need reassuring. The ones that hadn't been out yet wanted a bit more time and more reassurance about their health and safety in the marketplace. And then the last stat here is from the states. Tennessee, Georgia, Florida and Texas opened up, and unfortunately there only 21% of consumers had been out to eat in bars and restaurants after their lockdown. Maybe they felt the lockdown closing in the states was too soon, with too much pressure on states to open up. So if you get it wrong and open up too soon, actually no one else comes out anyway. That's just one reassurance at what's happening out there. And I guess the point from all these stats are that first visit consumers make to your restaurants, bars, pubs is crucial. It's more important than ever before. We're going to have to excite and delight these consumers when they come out to us. And the experience needs to be the best it has ever been in your venues. For me, success is consumers coming in with their friends, family, sitting down, eating or drinking, and forgetting about the coronavirus. You know, for that, after the first few minutes, sort of seeing what changes you've made, forgetting it's out there, and actually, a bit like driving a car down a motorway, and you get to where you're going, and you didn't realise you'd driven that far, but you got there safely. For me, if they can unconsciously forget about what's happening out in the outside world and enjoy that experience, they'll go home and tell their friends about that experience, and they'll come back. If that first visit isn't great, and all they do is spend an hour looking around at what's not quite right, they won't come back again pretty soon. So get that first visit to your businesses right. Questions to ask. This is more really about questions for yourselves. And actually, I guess what I would be saying is challenges to challenge yourselves here, post that relaunch, post that reopening to your consumers. So, oh, sorry about that. What's happened here? So the first thing is sort of asking you just to go back to the start. Go back to when you started your business, and how did you go about that? How would you relaunch it today? And I want you to think about it as relaunching rather than reopening, relaunching your business. What would you change about that relaunch? How would you do it differently? Step away from the emotion if you can. And I know that's hard because it's your business and it's in trouble right now, but step away from the emotion and just try and work out how you would do it better, relaunching this time around rather than just reopening and doing things that you did before. People are going to want to see things differently and try and wow them when they come into your venues for that first time. Ask yourself, what is your business's purpose? What are you here for? Why do you exist? And actually, do your staff know your purpose of your business? Do your consumers? And how are you going to make sure post this relaunch that everybody involved in your business understands the purpose and the role you play in that local community? Ask yourselves, is your business fit? Was it fit before coronavirus? Really be honest here. How good is your business? How good was your business? Was it the best that you can be? And if not, why not? What do you need to do to make your business the best it can be? And how can you be better than your competition? And what's that journey look like? And that journey is going to start today, but actually what's it look like? And how do you get to that particular place? But really be challenging about your business. And then the communication with your consumers. This is a really interesting one here. And I'm regularly logged on to various websites and get daily alerts, etc., on social media or email. And I've had a real myriad of emails from people that I like and visit for either eating or drinking, from no emails to some really good ones. And the question here, I guess I'm asking you is, how have you communicated with your consumers during lockdown? Have you been telling them what you've been up to with your staff, with your business, or what's happening out in the marketplace? Have you been telling them how you're working really hard to make sure that your venues are safe for their return? The steps you're taking for this? Or have you had radio silence with your consumers and just ignored them for the last 8 to 10 weeks? And my advice is, don't let your first communication, whether that's email or social media, don't let it be your reopening date and time. That means you don't care about them. So start that communication today. You've got the best part of 6 weeks now to start engaging again with your consumers and helping them understand what you're doing for your business and for them, and making your business safe for that future. And the same can be said for your staff on communication. Make sure you re-engage with those staff that have been furloughed, and letting them know how you're going to make it safe for their return to your business. In terms of planning for success, when you've asked those questions of yourself about your strength and about your communication and how you can make your business better, great chance to write a new 3-year plan for your business, your new 3-year plan, the relaunch plan. And the best place to start with that is a quick SWOT. And I won't go through the detail here, but just make sure that you sit down honestly with your senior team and understand what you're really great at and how can you maximize that strength. What have you wanted to improve for ages but haven't had the time? What process that you have in your business is holding you back right now? Which people that you employ are holding you back right now? And how can you maximize, how can you change that? And how can you make sure that your business structure is right for the future? The market is going to change. Your business is going to change. You're going to have to cut costs. Is your structure that you've got today right? And if it isn't right, then change that structure and make sure your purpose and strategy are fit and robust for the future, and work out how you're going to maximize and exploit opportunities out there. Opportunities will arise out there, and it's the people that are strongest and fittest and fastest that will get there first. Make sure that's you and not somebody else. A really good tool for the next 6 weeks between now and lockdown reopening is about putting a relaunch business action plan together. And there's 6 points of this plan. I'm not going to read through the detail. Those 6 headings are, the first one should be about protecting your employees and your customers. What's that plan to make sure that your staff and consumers are safe and know they're safe in your venues? How do you stress test your P&L and liquidity? You're going to have to factor in various scenarios for reopening on various levels of trade. Build a plan for defending against revenue decline. Revenue decline will be hit. How can you make sure that you rebuild trust and loyalty and market share quickly? The 4th point is about stabilizing your operations for what is going to be the new normal for a period of time. The 5th part is planning urgent cost cuts and conserving cash. This is about saving your business and putting immediate spending handbrakes in place on hiring freezes, capex, etc. And the 6th point, the most important one, is all the previous 5 are all defensive and they're going to save the business. But the 6th point is also play offensive, not just defensive. If you play too defensive for too long, it could be death by 1,000 cuts. So also play offensive. Outperform your competitors. Try and expand your market share if you can, and be ready to exploit opportunities that come your way, because they will come and somebody else might take them from you. What next then? I'm sorry to rattle through, but we're short of time. Then what next bit? A really good graphic here from CGA on what consumers are asking for from businesses. So just make sure that on that reopening plan, you are moving tables apart. You are showing consumers what you've done for them. They're looking for hand sanitizer. They're looking for enhanced cleaning protocols. I'm not sure the ones that aren't looking for it, what they're thinking about, but actually, but make sure you're aware of what consumers need. Talk to them regularly and communicate really well on what you're doing about that. And a great place to look is the Standard Hotel in King's Cross. Website details at the bottom. They've got a great section on the website about health and safety and what they've done for their guests and their staff in the lockdown period, and what the rules of engagement are in the future. And when you rock up at that Standard, if you're a hotel guest, what's going to happen to you and what you need to do, and if you're going to drink or eat in their bar area for a meeting, how that's going to work. So everybody that uses the Standard now knows the plan of action, and it reassured me as a regular user there that I would go back, because I'm thinking that they're taking it really seriously. So really worth having a look at their website to see how they've gone about communication to their consumers. About upon the reopening challenges that you guys are going to face, 2/3 of business leaders said they're going to have a phased reopening, and 1/3 roughly a mass reopening. And I guess the phased reopening is more about learning from sites that maybe things go wrong. Have a plan for your business. If you're a single site, it's going to be mass reopening. If you're multiple operators out there, think about that phasing it. Think about learning from the first 2 or 3 that open, rather than doing all at once. And this one here was asking those leaders about how long they might think reopening will take. And I think these guys have got it wrong. I think half of them are saying they can reopen in less than a week, and the other half are saying it's more than 2 weeks. I think the ones that say more than two weeks are probably close to the mark. But just make sure for each of your venues, and for your business, you plan enough time to make the place safe, get your staff back off furlough, get some training done, and reopen safely rather than reopen too fast. So in summary, consumers are going to need reassuring more than ever before. Remember or find your purpose, understand your consumers, understand your cash burn and cost cuts immediately, build that new 3-year plan. Don't forget to play offensive, expert opportunities. The next phase, in my view, will be tougher than lockdown, this reopening phase, because some of the furlough costs will go away, support will go away. So the next phase, I think, will be quite tough. And I think we're in this for at least 12 to 18 months for those of us that do survive. Again, if you want, and start this today. Don't look back in a year's time and think and hope and wish you started earlier or did things differently. So start this plan today. Back over to you, John. If you want the slides, guys, email me on this email here, and I'll email across to you. Back to you, John.
Thanks very much, Paul. Yes, I know there've been some questions about sharing a recording and slides afterwards. We'll share as much as we can with everybody. So so that's going to happen. I'm going to move straight into the questions. I'd first like to ask Anthony and Simon what your reopening plans are in summary, just to get your perspective. Whoever wants to run first.
I'll let you go, Si. Do you want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Yeah.
Sorry, mate.
So we've got 20 venues around the country, 5 in London, in most of the big regional cities around the UK. While we've probably got the operational and logistical capacity to open as one, we're going to do as Paul suggested actually in his presentation. I think with the furlough scheme available to us in its current form, at least till the end of July, we'll be looking to open 2 or 3 of our local sites. Our business and our central team is based in Manchester. So we'll look at opening the Manchester venues purely to exercise that opportunity to take any learnings from how we are operating, under what sort of trading conditions we might be working to, making sure that the measures we've put in place are working safely, that consumers are responding the right way to those measures, and just taking the time to take all that learning on. My intention in that first week really is to be in the venues pretty much 24/7, talking to guests and talking to staff and making sure that they're happy about what is in place. Once we're comfortable with that, we'll begin a fairly quick sort of phased rollout of the rest of the estate, and that might be a kind of a day on basis. So yeah, very, very much the phased view, and thankful really for that opportunity to do that because of the furlough scheme that's been extended.
We're kind of in the same boat. We've got 4 venues. We've got one in central London by Euston Station, 2 what you would call suburban pubs on the outskirts of London, and then a very rural food destination pub. We only closed for 2 weeks. We actually reopened our rural site for click and collect grocery. Our suburban sites, big populations around them, so we opened for takeaway, and our central London site is running its kitchen to provide homeless meals. So we're already learning as we go along. The 33-page document from the government on operating a takeaway business, a lot of the learnings from that are going to fall into reopening the venue itself. So we're already in the phases of opening, but what we will be doing is initially opening the suburban pubs, and the central London pub will be the last to open, because I don't think people are going to be very confident. It's not just about the pub. It's about the fact it's next to major transport hubs, and who's really going to want to get on a tube. We can do 2 meters distancing in our venues, but it's kind of pointless when you're only 5 centimeters away from someone's face on London Underground. And I think for us in metropolitan areas, we've got to consider that. But I do see an opportunity there. The suburban pubs, everyone's cooped up in their house. I've got a screaming child behind me at the moment behind that door. And when I can get back out and I can go to a local pub with a plug and a bit of social distancing, I'll be working back in a pub again. So I think we're going to see a lot more all-day trading from the venues, and our phased opening will be all-day trading and slowly building the evening busy trade back up again. And we're multi-split venues as well, so we've got 3 or 4 trading floors, and it'll be 1 floor at a time as we feel confident. Accommodation, private meeting rooms, massive opportunity to put groups into there where they are self-isolated as a group. But it's going to be tentative steps, and it's going to be reviewed, as Simon said, on a daily and weekly basis by the senior team.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. I mean, one impact that we haven't really talked about is if we're going to have reduced capacities as a result of the social distancing, are price rises inevitable, and how best to sort of deal with that, bearing in mind that consumers are going to have restricted incomes at the moment. So this, Paul, you might have a view on this, but also from Anthony and Simon too.
I'll let the operators go first, shall I?
Sorry. There's two sides to this. I think number one is price elasticity of demand. If the demand's not there from the consumer, how can you put your price up? I think social distancing in a lot of venues is going to be quite natural, because it's not like we're going to be packing people to the rafters. When you look at the stats that Katie and Paul showed us, if my venue's half full, I can do 2 metre distancing quite naturally, actually. On the flip side, though, I don't think we have to discount. I think one thing Deliveroo's done for us, which is brilliant, is it's bloody expensive. I don't know if you've all done takeaways and you get that £4.49 delivery charge. I myself had to put 50p on all my takeaway dishes to get that 28% margin back off Deliveroo a little bit. So I think when people go back out and eat out, they're going to realise, actually, it's not that expensive. So I don't think there's discounts are required, but I definitely don't believe price increases can happen. I don't think we have much of a choice there.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think it'll be we've got plenty of levers that we can pull if we're operating at a lower capacity. We're resigned to the fact that we're going to be working on slightly smaller margins across the board. You obviously got labour as a big tool to work with. I just think it's going to be quite a competitive environment. We know from the various presentations we've seen today that I'm not overly concerned about demand in general. I think that the right consumers are going to be coming through the doors, but the overall pool is going to be much smaller to fish from. And I think there is a danger if you start ramping prices, certainly, from the outset, that it's just going to scare people off. People are going to see that as the wrong response. And the way we're trying to approach it is, as Anthony said there, it's not about discounting, but perhaps being a little bit more elastic in the various sites. We've been looking at that prior to COVID anyway, being having a much greater range in terms of our regional approach to pricing, making sure we're lined up a little bit more keenly against competitors in that very immediate community. So it's something we're focused on, but I don't see, obviously we need our supplier friends to play ball as well. And if we get a big jump in costs from those guys, and of course that's going to have to be passed on in some degree. But it will be the last thing we'd be wanting to do, I think, certainly at the outset.
John, can I make a point here, please?
Sure, yeah.
We actually had some research come back about 2 hours ago that we launched on Monday, which we'll be sharing some out with the industry soon, where we asked people what will be the main consideration for you when going back out to eat. And this is a pub specific program, but going out to eat or drink in a pub. And actually 29% people, which was the highest of the split answer options, said a pub that I've been to before so that I can be sure of what they're offering me. Now, to back up Simon and Anthony's points, what that means is the people that are coming back into our venues are likely to be our regular customers. They're likely to be the people that are loyal to us. And those people are likely to know exactly how much they were paying for their drinks in our venues beforehand. So you're not going to be able to get away with doing anything other than sticking to around those prices, or being able to justify putting those prices up by changing the experience and the level of experience that they're gaining. So I think that's really important to know. And obviously that research is so hot off the press that I've only read the first 2 pages. So
thanks for sharing, Katie. Paul?
I think discounts will reduce, which Simon's point really, in terms of a lot of venues had too many discounts in place for far too many day parts of the week. So that will reduce. I think some venues will put prices up. If they've got some good loyalty, they may lose some of that. I think Katie's got a really good phrase that I heard her talk about yesterday, which is it's not about being cheap, it's about value for money. So if the consumers visit and think, well, you know what, this pint of beer is still great value and I enjoy coming here, then that'll be okay. But at Simon's point, it depends on suppliers as well, and whether or not prices are forced to go up because costs for the businesses have gone up. But I don't see a wholesale price rise, but I do see less discounting, and also reduction of some menu lines as well. And I know Anthony's got that plan in place, so less food items to start with, which hopefully means a better GP for the products that he's offering to the consumers going forward.
So I know, James, you're on the call as well, and it's we've touched on loyalty there and the impact on consumer confidence about going back to a place that they know well, as Katie said. What's your view on the impact of loyalty in this new world?
Yeah, so I think touching on the point that Paul made earlier, you know, we play offense, not just defense. So we're all going to be looking at our cost bases, reducing menu lines, trying to keep those costs down because the margins might be a bit tighter and the capacities will be reduced. But actually, I think the restaurants, bars, pubs, hotels that look at this as an opportunity, act proactively and positively, can actually form closer relationships with their current customer bases, and also potentially if they have good, strong propositions, reward and loyalty programs, then they can actually gain market share and start forming loyalty with new customers as well. One element of loyalty that I think is really important is, can you segment that? So there are obviously loyalty programs specifically for existing customers, which can be very good, but also can you implement programs that specifically target certain groups, whether that be your higher spending existing customers or high spending customers from outside of your existing user base. And I think where we have limited number of capacity, limited number of tables, actually getting that spend per head up as high as possible will be very interesting. And yeah, it's definitely worth looking at what you have in place at the moment in terms of reward and loyalty options to make sure that you're engaging with your customers and giving them great value and potentially gaining market share from specifically higher spending customers if you can.
Okay, great. I know we're running out of time, so just one or two questions left. There have been some questions about employment and the furlough scheme and sort of how to support that flexibility as we go through the next stages. So, you know, what is the general consensus regarding job security post-furlough, and how will you approach employment contracts? Anyone want to take that on?
Yeah, I can say what we've done so far. I think a word of caution here is that we haven't had all the detail on this flex furlough from the government. So I think it would be remiss of us to give advice on something we haven't been told about yet. And I think this is a bit around, a lot of us here are operators, medium-sized, smaller operators. Just be entrepreneurial. You've got to deal with a bit of grey here, and you've got to wait until the answers come. But in the meantime, plan what you can plan, engage your team. So we've done return to work questionnaires now. About half the team have returned those questionnaires around how are they getting to work? Do they have anyone in their household who are high risk? Are they themselves high risk? What are their emergency contact details? So let's just make sure all these things are updated. And we're seeing a bit of natural fall away anyway. So we've lost out of 70 odd staff. We've lost 10 who aren't coming back. And we've had 3 out of the 60 remaining who are very anxious about coming back to work. And I don't think we're going to see them until they can be assured that there's a vaccine, or we know that there's some form of herd immunity. So I think we're being cautious with it, but we're doing what we can now. But just wait for the detail. We're going to have to plan quickly when it comes, but the government will send that detail and we have to work to that. I wouldn't be second guessing. There's been too much second guessing so far across the industry, I believe.
Oh, John, you've muted, mate.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to have one last question about suppliers, because it's been asked a couple of times. You know, what are outlets looking for from brands or suppliers from day one when they reopen? Presumably some good deals, but yeah, anything specific that you think is important, because I know there are a number of brands and suppliers on the call too.
I think from our perspective, to jump in, is for these guys to think a bit more laterally about the challenge. I actually don't think demand is going to be a particularly huge issue for us. Certainly initially, you know, once we get the green light that we can have people back in the venues, and with, you know, the requirement probably to have people pre-booked, you're going to have a pretty good idea of what's coming through your doors. And we've seen that there's a reasonable chunk of the population who are going to be pretty confident doing that. Best part of 30% of people who are happy just to get going again as soon as the restrictions are up. So we've been approached a bit over the last couple of weeks with, you know, we can help drive footfall into the venues. And I'm not sure that's really where we're going to need the support. The bigger problem we're trying to think about is that with reduced capacity because of social distancing, we're going to have to think about other ways of augmenting revenue. And we're thinking a little bit more about getting the products, the offer out into people's offices, people's homes, without diminishing what we do in the sites. So if suppliers can be thinking about ways of helping us package up products, I mean, a lot of the guys, particularly in the the spirits business, are going to have access to bottling facilities. Is there ways of taking pre-packaged cocktails up to another level and looking at bringing things, some of that corporate activity that is obviously gone for the next 12 months, the big office parties, can we do something for those people in their space, but with our products behind them? So maybe thinking about the issue that way would be really useful.
But for me, I actually think a bit of that's already been done with suppliers. I've got to say, Camden Town Brewery did their Heroes Lager, and they've been fantastic. They sent 3 pallets of it to us for us to be able to give to the NHS, because all 3 of our London sites are very close to the key hospitals, St George's and UCLH. So we've been able to give beer to the NHS for free, and the amount of NHS staff who are coming to us, having not known we were there before, and who are going to be returning guests, returning customers, is going to be fantastic. So they can really help, we say, about the consumer, sort of the CSR piece. Suppliers can massively help with that now, and that's been key to what we've been able to do. It's given us a social presence, and they've been extending our reach massively. So Camden Town retweeting what a tiny pub next to Euston Station does has a massive impact for us. So it's been really helpful. And kind of on a smaller level, I understand what Simon said about packaging, helping with production lines. We're a lot smaller, but we're looking at things like the Great Outdoors concept, being able to use street pavement and all that. We know these guys have got bundles of outside bars. They've got furniture they use they were going to use at the festivals. They need to help in key areas where we can get them out on the street, and we can use social distances in with the additional furniture and use some of the resource that's already there, because I understand they're under financial pressure as well. So let's use the resource and create capacity so that we can all trade ourselves out of this.
Great, thanks guys. We're going to have to wrap up. Some people are starting to drop off now, and we've gone over the hour. But thank you very much to the panel, to Anthony, to Simon, Paul, Katie and James for joining today. I know there are some questions that we didn't get a chance to answer. We'll try and follow up on some of those with people, so they will be captured. Thank you very much, everyone, and we hope to do more of these soon with Trade and Lux in the coming weeks. So I hope you all have a great weekend, and all the best for the next few weeks. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, guys.